Hello and welcome back to Ursa's Lunch Break. My name is Ned Burns, and I'm joined once again by a returning Magic expert, Mitch Foley. Mitch, good to have you back.
Thank you.
Today is the final match of our preseason before we move into our actual real-life tournament that's going to happen at long last. I know a lot of you have been waiting for it. It's going to be a really interesting mix of decks. It's going to be mostly decks you haven't seen or you're maybe been curious about seeing. Some T2 decks, some interactive decks.
That's tier 2, not type 2 and not turn 2.
Man, remember the days of Type 2?
T has a lot of meanings in Magic, tournament Magic.
I don't think people were really wondering about that, but I'm glad that we've clarified.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about the bracket, but it appears that our bracket has disappeared. And it's gone forever. So
I don't know the password to this laptop. Let's just go to the match.
Well, let's talk about this match coming up. Again, this is our final show match of the preseason. It's going to be Gus, our returning champion, on a really interesting deck that one of our friends called out a long time ago, actually, and is now sort of showing up in the meta. It's an elf deck, but it runs Eldritch Evolution into Griselbrand. And then Chris is going to be following it up with a classic Lantern Control deck. So, Mitch, how does this elf deck work?
What it's trying to do is it's trying to power out Allosaurus Rider, which is a giant creature that costs 7, but you can cheat it into play by exiling some cards from your hand. And because of the cost reduction,
for you.
There you go. Enter the password.
Yeah.
That's the laptop, everybody. And because of the cost reduction, by allowing you to exile 2 cards from your hand, it puts a large casting cost creature into play fairly early,
cards?
possibly as early as turn 2.
No, we can't. It's a shame.
Then you can use Eldritch Evolution to sacrifice it, because it's probably pretty tiny. And then you can search up Griselbrand and then draw 7 cards, making up for all that card advantage you just lost. And also now you have a Griselbrand in play.
So it has a tiny power and toughness, but it has a huge casting cost. Thus, the Eldritch Evolution is going to work.
It's not that it has a tiny power and toughness. It's a variable power and toughness. It's equal to the number of creatures you control. And if you're getting it out, if you're powering it out on turn 2, it's probably not that big.
And interestingly, it is an elf. So the rest of this deck, which is, I think, a traditional elf ball deck, it's got elves and lords and things like that.
Right. It does have a decent fallback plan, but.
So is Griselbrand the only kill condition in this deck?
No, I mean, just like you were saying, it's got that elf ball attributes to it. It's able to just go wide or even go big if it has an overrun effect or enough lords and enough pump.
So on the other side, we have Lantern Control. This is a deck that's been around in Modern for a long time. It's never really quite made it into the top of the tier, but it does seem very strong. So what is its plan?
Its plan is to really just lock you out of the game by not only controlling what's in your hand and what is effective on the battlefield, but also what's on the top of your deck. And it does that by looking at the top of your deck with Lantern of Insight. And then after that, it's looking to just mill the top card of your deck, put the top card of your deck into your graveyard, one at a time, so that you never draw anything relevant to break you out of their lock.
Well, that sounds super interesting to watch.
It is. I think it is. I really do.
All right, well, let's see how our players are doing. They should be shuffling up here. Getting ready for the dice roll. So we have Gus on the left, with Eldritchasaurus Elves, hoping to walk the dinosaur straight to victory. And Chris on the right with Lantern Control, hoping to just prevent Gus from doing anything until he gets so frustrated that he leaves the game.
Before we went live, I think it was what was it? It was like Eldritch Elvesolution.
That sounds better.
So there's a lot of deck names going around for this, apparently.
Well, while players are looking at hands here, we can talk about the decks we have coming up in the tournament. We don't have a bracket to show you, but we can actually just list them off for you. So Gus will also be in the tournament. He's going to be playing the Snake Affinity deck, which is like normal Affinity, but with
more snakes.
Well, just one snake in particular, the Doubling Snake, the one that makes more counters appear on things.
Correct.
All right. Mitch, what do you think about this opening hand for Gus?
He doesn't have a turn 1 play or a turn 2 play.
But he has a hell of a turn 3 play.
No, because he needs a dude. He needs a nerd on the battlefield. This is like it's a hand that can get there. He has enough density of creatures in his deck that he might choose to keep it, but he might end up just playing this game and just not doing anything.
Well, so let's look at Allosaurus Rider really quickly, just so we can see exactly what we're talking about here. So here he is. He costs 7, and his power and toughness is equal to the number of the lands you control plus 1. But you can exile 2 green cards from your hand rather than
Oh, it's
casting.
lands you control.
Yeah.
I should read the cards before we go live.
No, it's fine. So he can do it here, right?
He can get it out.
Turn
but
3.
Yeah, he can get it out. Yeah.
But Chris might just drop an Ensnaring Bridge, which would be a real problem.
Where's the deck list? Does Gus have any main deck answers to Ensnaring Bridge?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, that's
It's going to be a race.
Looks like Chris is taking a mulligan here. And there's that Ensnaring Bridge in Chris's opening hand.
Which is certainly a really good sign for Chris.
Along with 3 Ghost Quarters, apparently.
That's quite a few. Ensnaring Bridge only costs colorless, though.
Now this is a hand.
Well, it's a hand with a plan.
So he's down to 5, and he's chosen to keep this off of the strength of Ensnaring Bridge.
Gus gets to go first, so he's going to get to pull off the combo. Let's see. Chris is just passing it back here. Let's see if Gus goes for it. Here's his 3rd land.
I mean, he doesn't really have a choice. He doesn't have anything else to do. So he's got to go for it. The most useless cards in his hand is that Crater Behemoth in that 2nd Eldritch Evolution. He's not really looking to go off twice.
So there it is. Eldritch Evolution sacking the Allosaurus Rider.
And Chris not worried at all with that Ensnaring Bridge in his hand.
Now, it's good to point out that Gus does have answers in his sideboard. But this pre-board game, as soon as that Ensnaring Bridge goes down...
We might see a concession.
Yeah. Although, maybe he hits some cards from us. Might get spicy. Here's the Ensnaring Bridge.
All right. We'll go to game 2 then.
Well, let's see how Gus answers this.
I hope by drawing 14 cards.
He's going to get to draw quite a few. Force the draw for Gus here.
Come on, Gus. Draw 7.
Why not?
Yeah, you got nothing else to do.
I mean, your opponent isn't going to kill you with damage here.
So, I mean, there's still a world in which Gus can win if Chris can't deploy enough of his hand all at once, and he does have 3 lands. So if he were to draw running lands, he basically is going to be stuck at 3 cards in hand at all times. With Gus's ability to go wide, he might end up with enough elves in play.
And that's true. He has Shaman of the Pack.
Yeah. See, he's got that in his hand. It's fine.
So if he has Shaman of the Pack, so why don't we take a look at Shaman of the Pack? When it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. So in theory, Gus could just play 20 elves or a couple Shamans of the Pack.
Right, and with that Gristlebrand in play, he's really able to put himself ahead on cards. He probably doesn't want to draw 14 this turn. He probably just wants to dump what's in his hand as much as possible, get as many cards on the battlefield as he can, and then do it again next turn.
Mm-hmm. Is it worth it to play this other Allosaurus Rider in his hand? Just to give him another thing to play?
Probably not at this time. It doesn't look like he has enough throwaway green cards in order to get that out there.
Yeah, I think Crater Hoof's the only throwaway.
Right. The rest you would just rather cast. So get that Heritage Druid into play.
Yeah, so he can do Heritage Druid, Elvish Visionary. He needs to draw a 1-drop elf off this Visionary. And if so, he can play Azuri.
And if not, then he waits a turn, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But Chris is going to be stuck with some cards in hand for at least a little while.
Well, he got a 1-drop elf. Looks like Llanowar Elves.
Perfect. So getting Azuri into play is actually really strong this turn. He's going to be able to... Let's take a look at Azuri.
He's going to be able to overrun post-combat, or sorry, post-attackers.
So for 5 mana, which he's going to be able to have access to just in lands, let alone the Heritage Druid activation, he's going to be able to do that after the Ensnaring Bridge has already done its check to see whether creatures can attack or not.
So it'll be very interesting if Chris draws... There's not a great target for a Surgical either. He can Surgical the Eldritch Evolution, but Gus really doesn't care at this point. I guess he gets Surgical this Allosaurus Rider.
I mean, that's certainly possible. Surgical Extraction not going to do a ton here. The important thing is he drew a non-land, which makes him able to start dumping his hand a little bit more. Every land he draws, while he's still sitting with 2 lands in hand, is just going to kind of keep it so that Gus is going to be able to get some damage in under that bridge.
Now, that said, all his dudes are still technically 1/1s right now, except for Azuri, who's 2/2, I believe. So even if Chris plays the Surgical Extraction, Gus is still going to get in for damage.
Correct. So if you're looking here, it's going to be +3/+3 to all the elves. So you're looking at 4, 8, 12, 17 damage.
Let's see if Gus uses
attackers. But that's doing nothing else for the turn, which is fine, because you still got that Shaman of the Pack in your hand. The only thing that can really get you is a Thoughtseize. Chris clearly doesn't have a Thoughtseize, or he would have played it. There's no reason not to.
Mm-hmm. And, like, with a Grizzlebrand on the table, you're not as vulnerable to Lantern Control's Lockout Plan as you might normally be.
Right. The thing that he wants to avoid, like, the dead card here is going to be...
All right, Gus takes it in the red zone with all his elves. And he's
does
pumping.
Indeed pump.
Let's see how much damage that is.
17.
All right. So with the Shaman of the Pack in his hand, next turn's looking pretty good for Gus.
Chris could rip a Thoughtseize, I guess. Chris is going to cast the Surgical here. Not sure why.
Just to get it out of his hand.
I mean, he gets to look at... So if you're playing a card that plays Surgical Extraction and you're going to lose and you have it in your hand, and if your opponent is already going to be fairly confident that you're playing it, you might as well cast it to see what your opponent's deck. Main board, it's nice to just be able to see your deck and get yourself familiar with what their plan is. Sideboard, it's nice to see how they sideboarded. And if you don't feel like you're giving up any information by revealing that you have the Surgical Extraction, it can be worth it to play it and then concede.
All right, then. Well, so it looks like that Surgical is indeed going to hit the Allosaurus Rider. Chris pointing out that he is dead to a card in Gus's hand. So now he knows.
Right.
Which means that if he does draw the Thoughtseize, he knows that he has to play it.
He still has 2 lands in his hand, and the Thoughtseize is going to take him down to 1. So
yeah.
The Thoughtseize doesn't help him. So what's going to help him?
Looks like
here?
another land.
A land's definitely not going to help him.
Yeah.
If he had drawn a Brutality, would that have done it? Brutality might have done it.
Because the Brutality would be able to strip... No, the Brutality doesn't strip creatures.
It doesn't matter. You can still target and dump your hand.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so Collective Brutality would have done it there.
All right. Well, Gus pulling out an unexpected win.
Yeah, especially after we thought he was dead.
Well, it shows how much the commentators know here.
Oh, yeah, I did the sideboard checkbox.
So players are going to go into sideboards here. Gus has told us that his plan is to put in the 2 Abrupt Decays and the 2 Reclamation Sages, taking out essentially some elves in the process. How do you feel about this?
I think that's a pretty good choice. Iona, not really going to be doing it. Chris's deck is largely colorless. Elesh Norn, again, Chris largely doesn't run any creatures. Rest in peace, you get some marginal value, but really what you want to be doing is attacking the artifacts. And that's what the Abrupt Decay and the Reclamation Sage are going to allow you to do.
So we don't know what Chris is going to sideboard in here. What do you think is his plan?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'm looking at is that, Chris just lost to the Gristlebrand being cheated into play. So the first thing I'm going to bring in is a Grafdigger's Cage. The second thing is Chris is going to assume that Gus is bringing in some sort of artifact removal, which makes Spellskite and Welding Jar almost certainly auto-includes. On top of that, Collective Brutality is just a phenomenal card, being able to be a removal spell for all of the mana elves. So that's under consideration, although maybe the Ensnaring Bridge and the ability to protect is a bit more important. I don't think Aether Grid comes in. Aether Grid is more for getting under cards that prevent... Aether Grid could come in. Aether Grid's not bad. It does have the ability to kind of kill all of Gus's creatures, so they can't be cheated in. I'm not really seeing anything else that Chris would want. So I think just the Welding Jars and the Spellskites and the Grafdigger's Cage. You don't want to do too much.
So both players kind of doubling down on the strategy here. What is Chris's normal kill condition with this deck?
Get your opponent to flip the table. No. In all seriousness, it's to kind of mill your opponent out the hard way. One card at a time.
So what you said.
Sometimes
the first time.
one draw at a time. His they're not eggs, but his 1 mana artifacts that are able to mill one and see them is the things that's going to kind of accelerate the game. But if his opponent is just on a pocket of lands, there's no reason to accelerate. You might as well just make your own hand better while your opponent just kind of spins his wheels.
Why don't we take a look at Gear per Aether Grid, because it's a relatively new card here.
I feel like it's been around a while.
It's been showing up as one-ofs in a lot of combo-ish decks. Oh, never mind. Not with this overlay.
Yeah, you get your Z index set wrong.
All right.
And this is a very powerful card that has even come up in... I've seen it in Legacy Tezzeret decks. Not at, kind of the tier 1 level, but it's got a really cool effect, and it gives decks with lots of artifacts a way to win without going through combat. And the fact that it can target creatures is just gravy on top of that. So, very powerful card. I don't think Chris will make use of it here, but if he does, hopefully we'll get to see how cool it is.
Looks like both players are going to 6 here. So what is Chris looking for in an opening hand here? So Gus is looking for Allosaurus Rider, 2 green cards, Eldritch Evolution.
Chris is looking to survive early. I mean, he's going to be able to survive kind of the long game. Gus is definitely going to wants to win as quickly as possible. So Chris just wants to survive early and get himself established. So if he's able to find like a Lantern of Insight and something to mill the top of his opponent's deck, that would be ideal. A Grafdigger's Cage makes a hand much more appealing, just because he then doesn't have to worry about being comboed out early, at least until Gus can deal with the artifact. So we'll see.
All right. Well, players are shuffling up here. Looks like we're going to go see 6 cards for each of them here. I'm so excited that the Elves deck managed to pull out that win.
That was good.
Like how neither of us saw the Shaman of the Pack option, although it turned out to not be a hugely important issue. I see an Ensnaring Bridge in the opening hand for Grist, though. And a Mox Opal.
Mox Opal, one of the cards that comes up for should this be banned in Modern every once in a while. Chris is going down to 5.
Looks like I don't think he had any other artifacts. Gus also going down to 5.
All right. Well, we might see...
well, drag us down both here.
Not great match. That's okay. Mox Opal, one of the more powerful, one of the most powerful cards in Modern, and it's deceptively powerful because people look at it and you see all these restrictions on it, and it's legendary, and you need an artifact deck. But at the end of the day, it's not, card disadvantage like Mox Diamond is, or even Chrome Mox is.
Is Mox Diamond still played in Legacy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, Lands is a very good deck right now. Chrome Mox less so. Chrome Mox kind of took a dive in Legacy ever since they changed how wishes work. But still very good. And Chrome Mox obviously banned in Modern. And Mox Opal, right on the edge. It is a very, very powerful card. And it is part of what makes this Lantern control deck as viable as it is.
But if it were to get banned, it wouldn't be for the Lantern control deck. It would be for presumably Affinity.
I think it'd probably be for a combination of both. But it certainly does. It does push the power level of the Affinity deck, or the Robots deck, or whatever we're calling it nowadays.
To be fair, it's also used in Cheerios.
Yeah, speaking of tier 2 decks.
Looks like Gus is going to stay at 5 and Scry, keep it on top. Chris is thinking about it. He's not happy. See an Abrupt Decay in his opener. Well, it looks like he's got some cards.
It's going to be tough to beat this 5.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have the Ensnaring Bridge, which is what he wants, but he's got a bunch of other good...
He needs a land or an artifact, or one costing artifact, and he is absolutely in this.
Yeah. Well, here's the Codex Shredder for Chris. It's a mill card. It helps him survive with his mill strategy. He needs a lantern in order to make it really be effective.
Well, Codex Shredder is nice because it allows you to get cards back from your graveyard, and so it's possible he wants to just start milling himself such that he has more targets to choose from later. And he was able to get the Blooming Marsh on his first draw. I'm not sure whether he scried that to the top or not.
Collective Brutality. 2 modes here. So he's discarding the Mox Opal and choosing to kill the elf and take the evolution.
That's a bold strategy when your opponent goes to 5, doing a duress effect in a largely creature-based deck.
Well, it's turned out to be a really strong play against Gus, who did not have a second land, and is now staring down the option of just playing a Nettle Sentinel and passing the turn. Chris gonna draw here.
Inquisition of Kozilek.
Yeah.
Easily the Heritage Druid is the choice here, making sure Gus doesn't get to have any mana ever. And with those 2 Nettle Sentinels, that would have been a lot of mana.
Yep. Chris not really advancing his board state. Gus does get to draw a Forest here, which is going to allow him to draw another card off the Elvish Visionary, and it looks like a Heritage Druid?
Yeah, and see, this is, Gus wanted to really attack first.
That was Collected Company, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if Gus had attacked first, then the Nettle Sentinel would be untapped right now. But unfortunately, he played his Visionary first main instead of second main.
Nettle Sentinel, a surprisingly skill-testing card. Oh, looks like a Pithing Needle for Chris. Now, this is a real thorn in Gus's side, but it's not a killer card. Let's see what Gus draws
What
here.
is he naming?
Another land. I assume he names Grizzlebrand.
Naming Azuri.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
See, I don't think... most of the activated abilities that you care about in the Elves deck are mana abilities, and Needle's not going to hit those.
So you don't think you care about the Grizzlebrand activation that much? Another Nettle Sentinel?
If he's got a Grizzlebrand out, you're probably dead. Or you have the game locked out otherwise.
Well,
Gus again... Well, I guess you didn't really have a choice this time,
he had to
because
do it
now
that
you're
time.
locked into it for the rest of the game.
No, it's... Well, so is Nettle Sentinel whenever you cast a green spell, or when...
Yes.
Okay.
So now next turn, if he draws nothing, he's not able to untap that guy and get into the attack. So he's missed an attack because of a mistake he made on, turn 2 or whatever it was.
Well, he drew a land that comes into play tapped because he does not have any elves in his hand.
Right, so there you go. So he misses out on 2 points of damage here.
Which, with this game going this way, may become quite relevant.
Absolutely.
Chris still holding onto that Abrupt Decay. He wants to save for something a little scarier than a couple of Nettle Sentinels and an Elvish Visionary. Ruins.
And again, he's getting very close to that 5 mana, able to bring something back with the Codex Shredder.
So Chris is not activating the Codex Shredder at all. He could have been milling himself.
I really
this whole
think
time.
he should have been milling himself the entire time.
Heritage Druid, the draw for Gus. He's thinking about it.
Well, now he has to play it. Well, he's got choices now, so he can play the Heritage Druid. Well, no, he doesn't, because then you tap both the elves, and then you tap everything.
You play the
and you got 3-4 mana for Collective Company, and then it untaps everything.
So he could swing
Chris
with
is
one
trying
Nettle
to
Sentinel.
figure out how he's gonna. Did he just attack?
Yeah, I think Gus has misunderstood how Heritage Druid works. You have to tap exactly 3 elves to generate 3 mana. All right, we're rewinding.
I don't understand
Something's
what's going
changing
on.
here. So I think we're
Responding to untapped triggers. It's not able. You're not able to respond to the untapped triggers. It's on cast. Like bring up Nettle Sentinel.
I mean, you can still respond to a trigger.
Yeah, but you can't abrupt decay the thing that's going to be the problem here.
Well, he can abrupt decay. Oh, I see. So your point is that the heritage druid has not yet resolved, so it's not on the table.
Gus is going to be able to cast that collective company in his hand this turn.
Assuming he doesn't attack with his Nettle Sentinels.
No, he'll still get to attack with them.
How's he going to generate enough mana?
Well, that's 3 right there.
Okay, so now
And
he's
got like
floating
100
through.
lands. Yeah.
Okay.
So then tap one of your lands.
We're thinking about it again.
Oh my goodness.
I think Chris is trying to find a way to jam his abrupt decay in at just the right time to prevent Gus from doing what he wants to do. Our director is telling us that... Oh, is this really true? All right, so Gus screwed up and advanced to combat, expecting that he was going to be able to cast Collected Company at his beginning of combat step. But as anyone who's been paying attention knows, the active player cannot currently do that. All they can really do is go to their Declare Attacker step. At which point, you either have to declare attackers or move on with your life.
So Chris not choosing to use that abrupt decay on the Nettle Sentinel and actually managing to use the Codex Shredder on himself, getting a Lantern of Insight in the graveyard. Let's get that Nettle Sentinel out of the way. And we do see a surgical extraction here.
All right, here's the Leno Rails for Gus. It's going to untap his Nettle Sentinels. Let's see if we'll finally see that Coco go off. So this is presumably with the untapped triggers on the stack.
Yes.
So the answer is no.
Gus missing the opportunity to cast his Collected Company again.
Yeah. So the Heritage Druid's going to die. Nettle Sentinels are going to untap.
But Chris should have done that during his turn, rather than give Gus an opportunity to cast it at all.
There's some spicy comments going on in the chat here. How does the chat feel about the past few events? Gus going to swing in and drop Chris to 2.
Interesting. So they missed 2 points of damage earlier.
That's really odd.
And now what's Chris at?
He's at 2.
2.
That is very strange. That needed to be an ensnaring bridge, though. Otherwise, Chris is just still dead.
He can go out on his own terms, though, with the surgical extraction.
Well, there you go. That is the honorable way to do it.
Well, I mean, it's good. He should be casting it here to see how Gus sideboarded.
Not for the 2 life, presumably.
No, not for the 2 life. Then you die with it on the stack. All right, well, Eldritchasaurus Elves takes down the match 2-0.
Yeah, let's do an extra game.
We are going to stick with it and do an extra game here.
Let's just keep, yeah. This show is enough of a train wreck. We might as well just keep chewing along till we smash into something truly solid here. So both players probably happy with their sideboard choices. I don't think they're going to change anything.
I don't like that Pithing Needle.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything.
So why is Pithing Needle not a worthy play to just name Grizzlebrand, for example?
So you want to avoid Gus getting the Grizzlebrand into play in the first place. It's like, kind of you get the Band-Aid for the gunshot wound. It's like you want to avoid the gunshot in the first place. And so you're not able to name any of the enabling cards with the Pithing Needle. You're not able to name the Heritage Druid. You're not able to name Eldritch Evolution. Those are either not activated abilities or they're mana abilities, and Needle doesn't help with those. So you're better off choosing a card that helps you advance your own game plan than something that slows them down after they've already established themselves. So he did name Azuri there. So you're better off with just other ways to kill Azuri and other things. Like you're better off with Aether Grid. You're better off with Collective Brutality. You're better off with Inquisition to Kozilek. You're better off with Thoughtseize and cards to make sure it doesn't hit the battlefield, or if it does hit the battlefield, you can Abrupt Decay it right away.
So in case the chat is wondering, yes, Eldritchasaurus Elves or Elvisasaurus Grizzlegrog or Eldritch Grizzlegrog or whatever we're calling this has won the match. But we got some time left in our lunch break.
Yeah,
we
so we're
played
gonna,
out for your entertainment.
Yeah, we're going to go for at least one more game here.
Gus is the victor, though. Chris is only playing to try to regain some of his lost honor. We're looking at hands here. I see a Collected Company for Gus. Chris is thinking about it.
Gus seems to be morally opposed to casting Collected Company, so I don't think it's going to see. But yeah, let's throw that nonsense right back.
I mean, maybe he just decided that he needed to handicap himself a little bit. I mean, you need to have goals, right? So maybe he just comes up with a new quest every game. So like last game, you can't cast Collective Company. This game, I don't know, maybe you can't cast Heritage Druid. All right, so we have an Ensnaring Bridge in Chris's opener. And a Ghoul Caller spell, but still, I don't think Chris has seen a single Lantern
there
this
it
whole
is.
game.
He's got the Lantern.
Oh, there you go.
He's got the turn 1 Lantern, turn 2 Ghoul Caller spell.
All right, so Chris is just happy with his hand here.
Yeah, this is a fantastic start for him. He even has the Surgical Extraction should he mill something from Gus that he wants to remove from the game entirely.
All right. Gus, what you got? I see an Allosaurus Rider and an Eldritch Evolution. Do you have a couple more green cards? Looks like he's going to keep at 6. Scry that one to the bottom. 2 Allosaurus Riders and an Eldritch Evolution. Gus has one plan here. He's kind of betting that Chris does not have a Collective Brutality in his hand.
Well, down to 6 cards, that's where you live. And he does dodge the Collective Well, he doesn't dodge the Collective Brutality.
Oh, good news for Gus. He won't have to cast Collected Company because he's going to exile it. But that is his draw for the turn.
So the Windswept Heath is probably what he wants to play here.
Just in case Chris tries to mill him or something, it gives him some control.
Right, he's got nothing else to do. It gives him a little bit of control. Although with no actual mill rock on the battlefield right now, it is less of a concern.
Well, he also doesn't need to draw anything in particular right now. Like, he has the combo in hand.
That's true. But he certainly doesn't want to draw a land. Yeah, I think you play the fetch land there just because you don't want to draw that land.
Well, Chris is going to take a look at the top. What is it, 5 or 6? 5? 5 cards in the library, trying to find a colorless card here. Let's see what he opts for. There's the Pithing Needle.
He's brought the needle to the front. Again, I don't think you want the needle. This would be better as any other card.
I mean, so it'll stop Grizzlebrand from drawing cards, but Grizzlebrand will still be able to smack him in the face.
He throws the cards on the floor in disgust at my comment. Nah, he can't hear us. There's even like soundproofing in this room. This is nice.
So Thoughtseize is now on top of Chris's deck. It looks like he's somehow assembling all the pieces he needs to just destroy Gus's game plan here.
So we get the Ghoul Caller spell. Some of the mill rocks in his deck are going to be symmetrical. Some of them are going to be asymmetrical. So Ghoul Caller's Bell,
I believe that is asymmetrical.
Symmetrical.
Oh, really?
Yeah, each player.
Oh, yes, sorry, Ghoul Caller's Bell. It's the Codex Shredder, which is asymmetrical.
Correct. And so this is a case where he's going to, but he's still, because players don't draw cards at the same time, he's still going to be able to choose to, get that Thoughtseize. Now, he's not going to be able to choose so much between the Collective Brutality and the Artifact Destruction Elf.
So Chris currently has Ensnaring Bridge, Pithing Needle, and 2 hand disruption effects. So now Gus, if he had played a fetch here, could have fetched in response to save his elf, right?
I mean, yes, but you wouldn't want to do that. You don't want to save the elf. You want to use it when you're about to draw and there's a bad card on top of your deck.
Chris was considering playing Ensnaring Bridge there, but I think he's going to opt for the Thoughtseize, which in this case is a much better play against Gus.
I mean, I think honestly, he wouldn't be amiss just doing Surgical Extraction to see what was in Gus's hand. And then from there deciding, do I want the Ensnaring Bridge or do I want the Thoughtseize? because that's just going to cost you 2 life. It doesn't cost you any mana, and it really gives you the most options.
As it is, Chris is going to see the linchpin around which Gus's plan is rotating. Let's see if he decides to pull that sucker out. There it goes.
Good choice. Good choice.
Gus might be forced to cast Collected Company this game. So Gus's deck has a surprising amount of game against the Lantern Control normal plan, just because it has the Grizzlebrand and it has the Collected Companies, both ways to get around the top of deck lock that Chris normally would want to do with a Lantern Control deck.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I'm not sure I'm betting on Gus so far.
No, certainly not. Our director says its name. The Pithing Needle is naming Azuri Renegade Leader once again.
All right. Which is a fairly brave play, because if Gus had drawn a second evolution here, he would have gotten to go off.
But we knew he wasn't.
Oh, that's right, because of the lantern.
That's the whole point of the deck.
That's a shame.
Catch up. And he's got the Surgical Extraction in his hand in case he needs an emergency shuffle before even the emergency shuffle that Lantern of Insight provides.
Coco's can hit the bin off the Goo Collar activation.
And see, this is actually a really good spot for the Surgical Extraction, because now you got a Coco in the yard, and you know you're going to take the one from his hand, and then you know he's just left with the 2 Allosaurus Riders, and you don't really care about those at this point with the ability to play the Ensnaring Bridge. Pithing Needle is so bad against this deck.
Chris showing another Pithing Needle on the top of his deck. Looks like he's just really afraid of that Grizzlebrand. Although, now that he's starting to play it, it looks like he's more afraid of Azuri.
The chat points out that Chris could name Windswept Heath, knowing that there are 2 in Gus's hand. Again, if you're bringing in a card to maybe shut down 2 lands against a deck that already has 3 in play, like, sure, you could do it. It's not really going to mess Gus up enough to be worth a sideboard slot.
Looks like Chris is deciding to cast that Surgical Extraction, but targeting Rexage rather than Collected Company. How do you feel about that play, Mitch?
I feel that that is an awful play. The way
no, but
that
how do you really feel about that play?
Gus gets back into this is by resolving the Collective Company. And you have the ability to just remove it from his hand and from the game right now. And instead, you don't.
Yeah, so Gus is going to be guaranteed to play that Collected Company next turn, unless Chris does something. Looks like there's nothing he can do, right?
Correct.
All right,
now
then.
He just gets to resolve.
All right, here's an Ensnaring Bridge. Chris down to 1 card in hand, and he's taken out the Rex Sages. However, having looked through Gus's deck, he knows that Gus also has Abrupt Decay. So the Ensnaring Bridge is not completely safe.
Again, a Windswept Heath here would prevent you from drawing that Grizzlebrand.
There's an Eldritch Evolution.
Because you don't want it in your hand. You're not casting it.
Yeah, Gus being a little conservative with his fetches here.
Yeah, he really wants to fetch now. The reason being is you know that Chris is playing Surgical Extraction. Chris is going to... Well, I guess you do know what he's drawing. He drew the Pithing Needle.
Here's the thoughts he's on
So
the
I guess
top
it
of
doesn't
Chris's
matter
deck.
as much. If the other card in his hand... Oh, he's got 3 Pithing Needles out.
Duplicato.
This is great.
It's only 2. It's only 2, man.
He's got 1 in his hand, though. All right, so he's named Gristlebrand. Gristlebrand's not hitting the table, though. So, again, a wasted card.
Gus, not a fan of casting that Collected Company. Okay.
Did he just exile it?
He just did.
I'm going to go into the room and smack him.
All right. Gus deciding that he just wants to, really wants to evolve that Allosaurus Rider.
The way this is going, maybe he's going to get Eleshnorn, because I don't know what's going on either side of the board at this point.
Eleshnorn actually pretty terrible for Gus than Snaring Bridge on the table.
That's why I think he's going to get it, because that's what's the direction this is going.
Well, let's see what Gus pulls out here. It's a Grizzlebrand. I imagine Chris named Grizzlebrand with the second needle. Oh, no, sorry. He was naming Azuri again. So...
No. He named Gristlebrand.
Nope. All right. Our director is correcting me. He did name Grizzlebrand. So Gus has a 7/7 flying lifelink with no abilities that
And
he can
no
activate.
ability to attack
Yes.
through the ensnaring bridge.
So, well, that was
So let's
fun.
look up Eldritch Evolution here.
There's a T in front of that C. 1 second.
Oh, we found it.
We're doing a spelling lesson. Here it is.
So you have to get something that costs X or less. So he could have
X
gotten...
plus 2 or less.
Right. X plus 2 or less. So he could have got something to help deal with what's on the board. Unfortunately, the only option that he really has in his deck
It's the Rex Sage.
is the Reclamation Sage, which he no longer has access to.
Well, so Chris is going to untap and take his turn.
And this is really going to be the last game of the stream, as we have 18 minutes left. And with Lantern Control firmly ahead, it's not looking to rush this out.
Well, Gus could just concede here.
That's true, but in which case we don't really have time for another one.
How shamed do you have to be before you just decide to fall on your sword? There's the third pithing needle.
What's he naming? Feldegriff.
It looks like Grizzlebrand number 2.
Oh, he's gonna... No, he hasn't chosen yet. Or the director hasn't let us know what it is.
Okay, well, the director's saying things that I don't understand then.
That's because you're looking at them in the wrong order.
Okay. Time is an illusion.
He's named Windswept Heath.
All right, then. Well, good
Gus
news.
doing everything in his power to make sure he does not win this game.
Well, the good news is now he can't even cast Collected Company even if he draws it. Which we know he's not going to
Thank
do.
God.
All right.
Wouldn't want to try to get back in the game.
Now, at this point, if you're Chris, do you mill away that forest? Here's a Heritage Druid.
No, you let him keep the forest. You know the only card in his hand is Grizzlebrand. Is the Grizzlebrand.
Maybe Gus is secretly trying to punish us by forcing us to watch this game for as long as possible.
Maybe Chris will draw a fourth pithing needle, and then I can leave.
I was wondering why you put that in your contract. Now that suddenly makes sense.
You got a contract?
Gus does indeed get to draw that forest. Debating, I'm not sure what he's debating. Debating whether to play the forest? Debating whether to... There it is.
Yeah, you're not really hiding anything against this Lantern Control deck.
Good old Temple Garden. All right.
Oh, that's it. Gus
That's
packs
it.
it in.
All right. Director, are we going to go for another one? Or is that it for the day?
I don't think we're going to have time for another one if Chris gets in control.
Well, I
we
mean,
can
could
try
just-
it. No time.
All right.
No,
Our
we're
director
being
says there's
told
no time. All right.
I got to sit up straight.
Thank you,
Whoa,
ladies and
that was
gentlemen.
fancy.
Yeah, it was fancy. For joining us for that really thrilling match.
It was
between-
thrilling. I liked the first game. The first game was phenomenal.
First
where he
game was
able to duck
fantastic. I
under
mean,
the
even we got
ensnaring
surprised
bridge.
by it.
That
which
was
is
great.
really great.
Yeah, because we're usually on top of things.
In case you're wondering, we have been gone on vacation for 2 weeks, and it's taken us a little bit of time to get back in the groove here.
That's
But
true.
don't worry, this is our runner-up game. Next week, when our tournament begins, we will be on top of things. Once again, it's going to be an 8-man tournament. We're going to have a ton of really interesting decks. Should I talk about the decks? Should I just list them
I
off
think
really
just
quick?
list the names, and
All
that's
right.
probably enough.
Let's
for now.
go through them really quickly here. So we've got Gus on Snake Affinity. We've got a Taxus deck. I think it'll be an Eldrazi Taxus deck. We've got another Eldritch deck. It's Eldritch Abzan though, so it's sort of more similar to pod decks of old, Birthing Pod decks. We've got Jeskai Flash, Goryo's Vengeance, a Madcap Ponza deck, which if you're wondering is a land destruction deck that has some other weird combos tacked onto it. Mono Blue Tron, and a Bring to Life Scapeship deck. Those will all be going head-to-head for the amazing Urza's Lunch Break Trophy starting next week.
And we'll get deck list published for you guys down at the bottom of the stream. Down at the bottom.
It's in the doobly-doo, I believe, is the
The what?
The doobly-doo.
Ah,
it's the
it's
term
not
of
a
art.
word.
Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps us out. We're burning towards 100 subscribers here so we can get our own vanity URL. So any subscriptions help us a lot in this regard. If you have a bet you want to make on who's going to win the tournament after you've heard all the amazing decks, make sure to leave a comment.
We're doing gambling now?
Well, I mean, there's no reward.
Okay,
or
so I guess it's not really gambling.
anything.
You're not really risking anything.
No. Listen, people got in
Can
trouble
we get
for
rid of the
gambling.
emoji cats?
Quite really. They were dogs originally, and it was shameful, so we fixed them to be cats. But that's going to be it for us this week. Thank you so much. Have a good time. We'll see you next week.